All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Axios House at UNGA and Climate Week. I'm Dave Lawler, a Deputy Managing Editor at Axios. Really excited to welcome those of you who are in the room and following along online. And if you are following online, you can use the hashtag Axios House. Really excited to welcome you to this conversation about how young people can build healthy habits, meaningful connections, and digital boundaries online. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first guests from the UN Office of the Special Representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children, Lucha Sotomayor. Lucha, thank you so much for joining Axios. We were just talking earlier about kind of the distinct perspective that you take in your work on these issues that we're talking about in terms of how to make the internet a safer place for kids, which is something that's top of mind for parents, but also society in general at the moment. Can you talk a bit about your work and how you think about tackling some of these challenges?
Okay, yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So let me explain very quickly what we do, because I know that UN lingo and UN structure can be a bit
That was a long title I had to read.
I know, thank you. You did great.
Thank you.
Yeah. We say the SRSG back. That's easier. Okay. So we are an independent global advocate tasked with the goal of helping end all forms of violence against children, right? In all countries, in all settings, all forms of violence, and the violence that children experience in the digital environment is one form of violence, but it's also linked to other forms of violence, right? Unfortunately, what happens in person happens online, and they're very much connected, and we try and keep them connected and also send that message. What we do is we work with governments, with industry, with civil society, with all stakeholders who have a shared responsibility towards ending violence. And we work with the UN country teams, that's UNICEF on the ground, the different organizations on the ground that are representing the UN and are collaborating with governments on helping them, advising, guiding, supporting their work that happens on the ground, and at the same time taking the higher level advocacy through the special representative who represents, as the name says, the Secretary General and the UN, on which are the suggested steps that need to be taken forward in order to protect children. And children is anybody under the age of 18. So we hear a lot of private sector companies say youth, adolescents. We are talking about anybody under the age of 18 who have a distinctive set of rights, and that those rights also need to be respected in the digital environment and in person. So we try and make sure that happens.
And you were talking about the interplay of sort of violence online and violence in the real world. I think when we're having that conversation, we're often talking about stuff that starts online and then can come out into the world. You also focus on the other way around, right? Somebody who might be experiencing harm in the physical world, and then how do they address it online or seek help? Can you talk a little bit about what you're working on there, and maybe anything you've seen that's working?
Okay, so we don't deal with cases directly, right? We work more on the higher level advocacy, and yes, so what happens in the real world happens in the online world, but also violence shifts and may take different forms, right? So for example, a child who is being groomed online and may meet an adult, and that could end up in child trafficking, or in child labor, or in child marriage, right? In-person abuse. So part of our work is to reinforce the messaging, that we don't isolate forms of violence. We encourage states, governments to have national child protection strategies and roadmaps towards ending violence against children, and to address children's protection in a holistic way, and not say, okay, so this government department is going to be working on this, and this one is going to be working on this, but rather children experience different risks at the same time in different ways. How do we make sure that they are protected, that their rights are being respected, that they get to grow up in a safe and nurturing environment, and that harm is above all prevented and not necessarily addressed once the harm happens.
But we were also talking about ways that kids can reach out basically online using some of these platforms, right? I think you were mentioning someone who had a sort of fake cosmetics platform where you could pretend that you were ordering makeup, but actually what you were doing was you were reporting harm that you were experiencing, so there could be action. Can you talk a little bit about, because that's something that I was not familiar with before we started chatting about it.
Yes.
Like, it's not always, you don't want to just post on Facebook, hey, I'm being abused. Sometimes it has to be a little bit more discreet.
Yes, okay, so there are many parts to that question. First of all, we need to understand that children generally do not report harm. Right? And violence is underreported. There are many reasons why children don't report harm, right? They could be scared, they could be threatened, they could be embarrassed, there could be stigma, or they could not know that what they're experiencing is called violence, right? That's why we have professionals in person, on the ground, who detect violence. Professionals in school, in hospitals, social workers, right? And they help identify when a child may be at risk of experiencing violence. When COVID happened, most of these services were disrupted, right? And children were no longer in touch with those who were tasked with the goal of detecting violence. And that's when the online comes as a relevant space where children can reach out for help. We saw during 2020 that Child Help International is a network of child helplines, so a 20% increase on children reaching out to their child helplines through internet means, where the access was available and where the channels were available. And we saw that children were using gaming spaces, social media, to look for help when they were at risk of experiencing harm that wasn't necessarily online harm, right? And this is one of those examples, because we saw children and young people coming up with solutions to help their peers. This was a Polish girl in 2020 created this fake cosmetic store, and you were buying makeup, but actually you were reporting some form of violence, depending on the kind of makeup or product that you were buying, the form of harm that you were looking for help around. You could even talk to a sales assistant who was a protection officer and could even connect you to the police if needed. And they had disguised ways of collecting the information, like how much, what kind of level of alcohol does your skin support, in order to identify if the abuser was under any substance that needed special attention. That's a child using the internet to create safety, right? When we look at the internet as a place that needs to be safer for children, we need to look at both of these angles. Children need to be protected from harm, and the internet today is not a safe place for children, and we need to work towards making the internet safer, and that's a work that needs to be done with ICT sector, with governments, with CSOs, towards making sure that that children get to be safe online. But on the other hand, thanks to having access to the internet, children could get the help that they need if there are services that are on the ground, connected to the online, with all the safeguards, and making sure that they are facilitating reporting for children regardless of the form of harm that they're experiencing. So we started to explore the second side, because this first angle of making the internet safer is being approached. We are continually working on it. It's being approached by governments, by states. The UN is permanently recommending. Recently, 2 years ago, the General Comment 25, the General Comment to the Conventions of the Rights of the Child, focused on how children's rights should be respected in a digital environment. It's suggesting guidelines for legislation that's happening. But this other side of the coin wasn't being totally addressed. So we started convening, in collaboration with another UN organization, the ITU, International Telecommunications Union, we started convening child helplines and other UN agencies like UNICEF, UNODC, tech companies. Roblox is speaking after me. Roblox is part of this. TikTok, Meta, Microsoft, Lego, Disney. We asked them, have you seen this happening in your platforms? Have you seen children looking for help regardless of the form of harm that they may be experiencing, and even not related to online harms? And unanimously, the response was yes. We are seeing this is happening, and we're not entirely sure how to respond when the risks are not related to our platforms. And we convened this community and started to do what we do, research. We started to collect data and evidence, and we collected data from 83 countries of child helplines that had activated online channels, that had transitioned online, or that were born online, to understand how are children using your online channel to get help. Where's the conversation? How do you identify the issues that children need support around, and how are you working with the private sector and with governments on this? And we are about to publish the 5 principles, the 5 Ps. The online risks are 4 Cs, so these are the 5 Ps, which is very beautiful and harmonic way of presenting it. And these are principles and recommendations for policymakers, for tech companies and child helplines on how to ensure that children get to access the help that they need through these online channels. And also, that's another way of making the internet safer, because a safe internet keeps children safe while they are online, but at the same time opens avenues for children to access safety, protection, and support.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, angle. What is your responsibility, or what can you do if a kid is coming onto your platform and talking about harm that's happening, unrelated to your platform? But I want to talk about, you said there's 2 sides of the coin. I want to talk about the other side of the coin. We're both parents, although my son is a toddler, so not yet able to access the internet on his own, but probably not too far away from that. You've obviously, you're both a parent. You've also written the book on this topic about how to navigate the challenge of, the dangers that your child may encounter online, or at least, they're encountering a world out there that they might become more familiar with than you are as the parent. How do you, when people ask you about that, what do you tell them? What's your advice to parents who are trying to figure out what to do?
I think parents have the toughest job, definitely, because I'm a parent of 2 teenagers. They hate me when I say this. 13-year-old girl, 15-year-old boy, so the target audience of many of these risks, right? And we were not taught to prevent these types of risks, right? Parents naturally replicate the ways that they were brought up. So if your caregiver told you when you were growing up, wait, you need to look both ways before crossing the street, that you replicate it, and then you tell your child, we look both ways before crossing the street, right? Nobody taught us that. I'm 43, I did not grow up with the internet, and nobody taught our generation on how to prevent and address risks online. So there's a huge digital divide. So there's been a lot of work done at country levels on equipping parents to be able to first understand the risks that children are exposed to when they are online. And fortunately, all children are exposed to risks online, which doesn't mean that the risks will turn into harm, right? But they are at risk. So how do you equip them in knowing the risks and in knowing what to do on, how to set the parental controls, how to set privacy on the devices, equipping them in understanding that it's not recommended to give devices to younger children. So there's the work that needs to be done on building parents' capacities to prevent and respond to these threats. On the other hand, how do you create and how do you help bridge the relationship where children are going to trust their parents to go to them when it's likely that children may know more than their parents, right? Not all parents are the same. Parents are in very different situations. Parents may be in a refugee camp. They may be having to work 3 jobs. They may not be literate. They may not know how the internet works. So not all parents are the same. How do you encourage that trusting relationship? This morning I was at a Tech Coalition event. Hello. Tech Coalition colleague, and Microsoft presented something very interesting regarding their findings about what children do when they are at risk online. So in 2016, Their audience research showed that when children were experiencing risk or when they were at risk of experiencing harm, they would turn to their peers, which is something, it's a data that we know. Generally, children turn to other children when they are, when they feel insecure, when they feel unsafe. And their latest research is showing an overwhelming shift in children turning to parents, which means that the messaging on reach a trusted adult is working. Now, how do we make sure that parents are equipped with the response, with what to do? And there are many different layers to that as well. I think also parents, are growing. I'm an older parent, you're a younger parent, you know more about technology. And there's...
Be sure about that, Lucha. Yeah, but you're very kind.
Yes. No, I think that it is happening. Younger people are becoming parents and they are closer to, when the internet started to be widespread, and they may understand more those dynamics, depending on the countries, yet, of course, and on the realities. Now, a personal advice that I give to parents, but as a parent myself, because I get asked that question, like, how do I keep my child off social media, off online games? How do I take the devices away? And it's a really challenging question because, it's not like, yeah, just take it away. You need to give an alternative. Right? You need to, if you're going to say, okay, no social media, no online games, or these are your allowed timings. What is the alternative that you give in exchange of that? In an ideal world, we can spend time with our children. We can give alternatives that are protective factors. But of course, the world, unfortunately, is not ideal. So we need to, even though we reinforce that message, we still need to circle back to the making the internet safer, right? And make sure that those children who may not have an alternative have a safe space. It's not always about how much time children spend online, but what are they not doing because they're online, right? And they may be even protected from other risks if they're doing something else online. So it's not black and white. I think giving alternatives, being part of your child's experiences, both online and offline. If your child really likes to play an online game, get to know the game, play the game, right? And sometimes as parents, we try and draw children towards our thing and what we like and what we're good at and what we can teach them, right? And I think with the online, we also need to change that narrative and be open to what can they teach me in regards to the online, and then what do I bring into that relationship? And as an adult, I'm going to bring a safer perspective. I'm going to bring safeguards. I'm going to make sure that this is a rich experience. So I think the cross-cutting recommendation, regardless of the age group or the country or the language, is be part of that. Whether it's, bring them to your own offline experiences that you come up with together and there's an alternative. But if there's not an alternative that it's attractive enough, how are you part of that space? So it always goes back to that, parent-child relationship, regardless if it's online or offline. The relationship is the substance of it, and it's going to be what you're going to transmit as a parent, ultimately, hopefully, ideally.
Lucha, we're running up short on time, but we like to end with one fun thing. You are a UN insider. Most of us are struggling to navigate New York this week, barricades, traffic, etc. Do you have any tips for the rest of us as somebody who knows UNGA Week pretty well? So
the recommendation that we get internally from security is avoid the UN. Literally is, if you don't have to go into your office this week, don't. Avoid the UN area.
Come to Axios House instead, I guess.
And also take the opportunity to meet with people who are in town as well. It's a fun week in that way, hopefully, for everybody.
I think so. Well, thank you so much, Lucha. I really appreciate it.